Hey everybody, I'm Matt. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Ginkgo. Really excited to be here to talk about biosecurity. I know we just spent a bunch of time talking about the amazing products being built on the platform. I think this is a really important connective piece to that. Just like in any industry that grows, if you think about computing and you think about the digital revolution, it wouldn't exist without really powerful cybersecurity tools. And so from our standpoint, this amazing ecosystem that we're building on top of the Ginkgo platform, we also have a responsibility when we think about the care we use in engineering biology to integrate security tools over time into everything we're doing with our partners, into their products, to make sure that we're engendering the right kind of development. And it's really deeply built into who we are about how much it's important to care about how our platform is used. Biology is such a powerful tool. It's something that we have to be thinking about when we're thinking about applications of our technology. We have to be thinking about it when we're thinking about the security around biology. Today, we have this amazing group of people that have come to Ginkgo as advisors and as part of the team to really help us think about how to do that security piece in a really powerful way. So I'm excited to have with us General Tom Bostick. General Bostick was the head of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and then in a way that's really close to our hearts, moved over to be a biotech executive and has been just a great mentor for us and an advisor for us at Ginkgo. Renee Wegersen runs all of our biosecurity efforts focused on the U.S. government and has joined Ginkgo in the last year from 10 years at DARPA. And so just brings this amazing set of experiences that has been really helpful for us as we think about what our role and responsibility are both on the culture side, but also on the technology side. And Andy Weber, who has this amazing set of history and stories around 30 years of engaging in this world of how do we protect ourselves from bio threats and from other things that exist on this planet, and has just this wealth of knowledge about how governments around the world work. And most recently in government was an assistant secretary of defense in the Obama administration focused on these issues. So really excited to be here today to have the opportunity to talk about biosecurity in the context of what we're building here at Ginkgo. Maybe I'd love to just start with you, Andy, right? We're coming out of COVID. Certainly the world is engaged with biology over the last year in a way that maybe is different in the last century. How much should we be thinking about biosecurity and how are you kind of thinking about the next decade?
Well, we're living through the largest biological event of our lifetimes. And we've seen an acceleration in the technologies that are helping us get through this. It's been an amazing amount of progress. I think we're at this inflection point, and it's a little bit like we were in the early 90s with the internet and the smartphones. We have this new sector of the economy that's really launching now, and it's enabled by the digitization of biology, the ability to program cells, and we're just tapping into that now, and it's going to change everything. So we have an opportunity, though, to bake biosecurity into it now and not have that vulnerability that we've seen in the cyber world, where they didn't really think about designing cybersecurity into the systems from the beginning, and now there's a huge investment in playing defense. So I think we also have an opportunity to establish the norms for this new sector of our economy and to establish some taboos, what not to do with this amazing power that's been unleashed.
Yeah. So Tom, I'll go to you, right? I alluded to it, but this incredibly unique combination of deep national security experience running massive organizations in the U.S. Army and then existing in the biotech ecosystem. How would you address this same question? Why, after all, what we fundamentally believe, right, is that biology and making things out of biology will transform economic output in the next 5, 10, 50 years. How have you engaged in that topic? What has changed? What are the things on your mind as we think about this interplay between security and economic outcome?
Well, thanks, Matt. It's great to be here, and I love being a senior advisor at Ginkgo. And what I'd say is that I spent much of my life on the national security side of the house with Department of Defense, as you pointed out. I was building better dams, and now I'm building better DNA. And that was a difficult transition, but it's a transition I was very happy to make, because I truly believe that biology has a chance to make a huge difference in the future of our world that we live in. Much of it's going to come down to trust. When you think about biosecurity, biosecurity is the facilitator for the bioeconomy, but it's going to do that by building trust. And by building trust, what I'm saying is that people need to feel comfortable. They need to understand what's happening to them. And when scientists do things, people most often trust that solution in times of crisis. And the crisis could be COVID, and you've seen many people trust the science and trust the scientists, take the vaccine. If you're in stage 4 cancer and there's a new immunology solution, people will trust that, even though there's some risk there. But when you think about where the world is going with many, many more people on the planet in the next 30 years, we need that trust not to exist just at the extreme of crisis, but throughout our daily lives. A good example is what Ginkgo is doing with K through 12 pool testing. The kids going to school in the middle of a pandemic, and they're doing that because the teachers, the mothers and fathers, aunts and uncles, and the children trust that they're in a secure facility in the school. And they trust that because of the biosecurity platform that Ginkgo has provided.
So what we're doing in K-12, really it's this mindset shift. It's this mindset shift from we use biotechnology in healthcare purposes only. What we're doing in K through 12 is really offering schools the ability to test classrooms as cohorts and generate data like they would generate testing data or any other type of data in a school setting to make better decisions. So if we imagine a world with hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of products made in this incredibly powerful, efficient way coming off of the Ginkgo platform. You're saying, let's not just have security in the extremes, an mRNA vaccine that's massively amazing to bring us out of our current crisis. We're also saying, let's have consistent, regular security and trust throughout. So Renee, I think that's, especially as you've thought about this transition from DARPA into building this at Ginkgo, what is it about what we're doing that gives us this unique advantage to build the tools to generate this trust that you're talking about, Tom? Coming from DARPA, what have you seen, and what is it that you reflect on there?
I do see very much that Ginkgo is in some ways almost like an ARPA of the private sector. And what I mean by that is, when I was at DARPA, we were building breakthrough technologies for national security. And so, really Ginkgo is using its platform to create the next breakthroughs for the bioeconomy. And it's not prescribed to a single application at the end of the day. It's food security. It could be K through 8 testing, but it's really based on this platform. And we were successful in bringing K through 8 testing and in helping respond on the vaccine side of things, not because we're a pandemic preparedness company. It's because we're a platform company that is able to pivot and respond to what that challenge. And so a year of powerful biology. Here it was the pandemic, but it's the powerful response of what our platform gave where we could respond. And we're going to use that in the future for our customers. Bring us your challenge. Maybe it's the supply chain issue is the next thing we deal with. Maybe there's an outbreak in agriculture that is actually brings an economic threat to our shores. We're going to be ready to respond because we built a platform to do that.
So you were incredibly important in building our K through 12 testing program. And I think connecting a couple of these pieces would be really helpful for us to understand. So at this point, our lab network that we've partnered with to qualify to run testing across the country has enough capacity to test every student, teacher, in America, right? And that gives them this data layer to be comfortable in knowing, like any other piece of data, what's going on with COVID-19 in their communities. Can you just share a little bit about what you did differently to bring biology to these communities that had never really engaged with something like test every kid every week?
Yeah, in the Baltimore City Schools example, I think is a really great one in the way that Ginkgo approached the challenge. So rather than go to Baltimore City and say, hey, we have the solution. This is what you should do. We came to them, told them what we think we're capable of, but really wanted to listen to them and understand, what do you need actually, and what is going to be workable in your communities. And so this wasn't a single conversation. This was many, many conversations over many days and weeks to understand, how can we be on the same level? And does this work for your students? Does this work for your parents? Because the parents have to give consent, of course, for their students to be in the testing program. And we knew if we got that right in Baltimore City and invested the time, that would allow us to then, bring that to other cities with in much easier and a faster way. And that really did prove to be the case, that we were able to scale to now thousands of schools across the United States.
So what could you imagine with your kind of DARPA hat on? Crises create opportunities to change how we do things to better prepare ourselves for the future. Every major crisis in human history, things have come out of it, right? That are unique and different. So we're testing kids across America in schools. What do you see that turning into if we get it really right as a country or as a world? What could that do to prprepare ourselves in the future? Andy, I'm going to ask you the same thing in a second.
I'm going to give you two answers because I think there's two different. There's like a scientific way and there's like a cultural way that you can answer that. And so the first is like kids are really excited about having this technology. Our creative team has really made an effort. There's even comic books that the kids have now so they can learn about the testing. And so going back to the lab network, what I'm really excited about on the technological side is not what those labs are doing now. It's what those labs were doing before COVID, right? We've partnered with labs that were doing environmental monitoring. They were looking at wastewater. They were sampling from the environment. There were labs that were doing cancer diagnostics, labs that were doing 100 tests a week to 100,000 tests a week. So like there's so much potential in that network now that we are working with those partners and how can we really leverage that going forward to continue to understand our biological environment now connected through this digital layer that we built to really be ready for what's next,
Andy, in your last job, or if you look forward, if you had a network, the ability to monitor in an anonymized way what was going on in the biological ecosystem, how would that have changed what you could have done or how we would have prepared as a country?
Yeah, well, these technologies and the distribution of them widely are going to give us the capability of having that weather map where you get the weather report every day for infectious disease everywhere in the world, real time. And that will allow us to nip epidemics in the bud. So the information piece, the genetic sequencing piece, it's all coming together. And I think because of the COVID crisis, the application of these biotechnologies has leapt ahead a decade in just a year. So now we've made that much progress. We'll sustain it and improve upon it. And the benefit to humanity will just continue to grow.
And when you think about biosecurity, it is an early warning. It's trying to identify the infectious diseases early on so you prevent the sort of damage that we saw with COVID, with deaths and infections and people getting sick. And I think in the future, just like you talked about earlier with cybersecurity, leaders will be asking, what's their biosecurity strategy? How do they approach this so that the company is more resilient? And I think in the future, you're going to see chief operating officers briefing boards about their biosecurity strategy. And that biosecurity strategy in all these different companies are going to have to lean on the private sector expertise that can deliver on that. I think that's going to be ubiquitous as well. And we've seen it already with what's happened in COVID. So the question is, how does that get extended? How much are boards willing to invest? And I will tell you that, with my public and private sector experience, it's a tough decision. How much do you invest in almost like preventative maintenance? And some folks are willing to take risk. And when you take that risk, you pay a lot more on the back end as opposed to doing it on the front end.
How do you see Ginkgo continuing to engage with the Department of Defense, some of the other governmental research organizations? And how does that? What's that interplay with just the continued innovation spirit at Ginkgo, and where can we continue to use that as part of this development, both in biosecurity and otherwise?
6 years ago, the co-founders came to me for help. They wanted to make a contribution to national security, and it's amazing how respected they are in the Department of Defense as leaders of this new sector of our economy that has applications across the Department of Defense and the Department of Health and Human Services. And it's been an education process. But at this point, when the government thinks about this, they turn to Ginkgo, they turn to the leadership here because they know that that's where the capability lies.
So we're in all of these communities across the country now, and really focused on using testing as a data generator so that people can make decisions on a classroom level or a grade level and not on a community-wide level, right? This is the idea that these are decision tools to make better, more nimble, sophisticated decisions. But they're in schools, right? And obviously the current administration has invested massively in testing in schools, and we're playing a huge role in supporting that. But Andy, as you look towards the future, right? I think we see lots of different opportunities out of a crisis that, we've changed, we've given schools and other parts of the community new tools. What could this be used for as we go forward? What are the other ways to build on this infrastructure that has now been laid as a country or as our communities?
Well, I see it as part of an early warning system, a weather map, if you will, for infectious disease, so we can see those storms coming and actually prevent them from happening.
There's such a visual reaction to somebody when you say forecasting, right? Like you think of the weatherman and here's his forecast. And what we haven't really talked about yet is our dashboards. And so not only are we generating this data, where we've developed the capability to digest that information and then give that to a decision maker who might not have a PhD in molecular biology, but can say, wow, okay, my rates have been going up, and look at my rates relative to the community. And oh, by the way, this last month I tested 100,000 kids. And these are like really important points that the decision makers can bring forward to know how to move. And I'm really excited about that interface with the communities. I'd actually be really curious, Tom, like you running an organization that is global, like Army Corps, what were the tools that you worked with that helped you make those decisions? And
one of the things I was going to follow up on what both of your excellent points is that I've been involved in a lot of disasters and responding to those disasters. In some places, you'll find people are prepared more than others. Florida, they've seen a lot of hurricanes, and places where earthquakes in their operations center. And what Ginkgo has done with this capability that it's placed out there with K through 12 is almost like a public-private partnership on a grand scale. A lot of these cities and towns and communities and states have not had to respond in the way that some other states have had to respond with disasters. So I think I give huge kudos to what Ginkgo has done in that particular way, not directly in the K through 12 testing, which has been huge, but really macro level. How does the public and private partnership come together in a way that makes meaningful change? But the Corps' system is to work with governments, just like Ginkgo has done. So I stood back in awe to watch Ginkgo do what maybe the Corps would do, but we're not experts in schools. But I see a lot more public-private partnership, and Ginkgo has helped to facilitate that at the tactical level all the way up to the state.
Well, that was great, Tom. Thank you. And I just want to everybody here, but also kind of in the spirit of the whole company, this has been a really amazing, hard, challenging, fulfilling year. And I appreciate all the work that you all have done to help us try to have the impact that we've had, both on the biosecurity front, but also on the platform build front. And look forward to many years to come. And thank you all for your guidance and work, and very much appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.